The Australian Ghost Whisperer with Katerine Legato and James Jennings. Hello everybody.
Hi everyone, welcome back.
Now today's episode that we're bringing you is actually very Australia focused. Mm-hmm. So if you're Australian you might be interested in it. If you're listening to us from overseas, hopefully you might learn a bit more about this country. So we want to talk about the haunted history of Australia. So Australia has quite a dark history, if we're going to be honest about it, and we are about keeping it real on this show. So today we're going to talk about Australia. We're going to talk about the Indigenous Australians, Aboriginal Australians, their connection to the land here, the history or some of the bits of darker bits of white settlement where, Australia still hasn't fully come to grips with the horrors of the past. But we want to talk about that and how that has affected our country in a spiritual sense. Kat, what's your feelings about the things? Where to begin? It's a big topic.
Going back in my past, at a young age, I was always in communication with the Aboriginal spirits in a positive way. They were just so beautiful. I would come home from school. We had a mulberry tree in our backyard, and I'd just go and sit there quietly. I'd obviously go into some form of a meditative state, and the Aborigines would begin to appear, their spirits, and they would do these incredible dances where it was like they were becoming one with the earth, becoming one with the land. And they were honouring the land, they were honouring the earth. And I don't know how long would go by, I just would sit there in awe of how beautifully connected, and the energy and the presence around them was so divine and spiritual. I wouldn't even know how to describe it properly. But I felt there was so much love in the way the tribal dances they did, and the actions and their hands and the way they moved, and I could see the energy of the land and they almost becoming one. And as they moved with the energy, it was like they were blessing the land, and I could feel the light going into the land, and they were honouring Mother Earth. So an incredibly spiritual beings the Aborigines were. And on the other hand, I also used to see the convicts that were obviously brought into Australia. And I'm sorry, I know that we're not proud of but it was terrible what was done to them. And they'd show me their shackles and their spirits. They'd come to me crying because they'd been taken away. Some of them only very young, taken away from their families and taken away from their loved ones. And it was a life of absolute slavery. And a lot of their spirits are still around. And so I used to try and help them, obviously, as I got a little older. I would help them to cross over, to connect with love, and to enable them to cross over, because they were still here and they were suffering with their anguish, and they went through extreme horrors. So a lot of this energy, I feel like parts of Australia are built on the pain and suffering of the massacre of the Aborigines, the convicts that were brought here. And so this pain and suffering is going through the ley lines of the country, and the ley lines are traumatized by the trauma that was done to the people that were living here via the Aborigines, the convicts, and all of that kind of thing that went on in history.
Can you explain ley lines a little bit more for us and how they work?
Yeah, so ley lines are like the veins that go through the planet. It's like we have the veins that go through our body, so does the earth. It has its own veins, and I look at them as the ley lines, and they can hold positive energy, and they can hold the negative energy, the trauma. So when I go and clear a house, I don't just clear the house, I also look into the ley lines of the earth, of the land, of their foundation that their home is on. Because often many homes have been built on, what was grave sites of the Aborigines or was sacred sites for the Aborigine, and this has disturbed the ley lines of that part of earth, that part of the land. So therefore I need to go into those ley lines and run the light through them in order to help those ley lines to heal, because you will be picking up energy from the ley lines also. So if your home, say, has been built on what was perhaps a sacred site or was a cemetery, that's still a sacred site because the Aborigines buried their loved ones in a sacred site. So you would be picking up the trauma from those ley lines, the pain and suffering from those ley lines. And that's why often, it's really important to not just bless a home, but also bless the land and clear the land and send light and love through the ley lines in order to heal that piece of land. Wow. And sometimes it can be, I remember a long time ago going to do a house clearing, and the whole street, everybody was sick. Everybody was sick, and so many people died from sickness in this whole street. And when I looked at it, all the ley lines, this whole street was sitting in traumatized ley lines. And so obviously people were picking up on that, and then they were getting sick. It was literally making them sick because it was drawing out their life force and making them obviously very ill, to the point where many of them died.
Okay, so what you're saying is that basically these ley lines can hold the trauma of the past, or traumatic actions can actually be held and retained by the earth. Can that be healed?
It can be healed, yes. It can be healed. You can do it yourself. You can go out in your backyard of your home, go into your heart, connect up with divine spirit, feel the light flowing through you, and then sending it out to the earth, or do like a beautiful ceremony of blessing the earth, blessing the land. Do it in your backyard. It helps to heal if there was any past trauma, which there obviously I think was in so much of the land in Australia, so much trauma. So you can do your own little ceremony if you like. It might be, where you might want to go outside and build a fire, and kind of small fire, and sit around it and sing some beautiful songs to the earth, or run some energy, like some light through the earth, or anything that's going to uplift, anything that feels sacred to you. Just, do that to the land, because the land does hold trauma, and that trauma will affect you long term, like it did that street that I went to where everybody got so sick, and eventually so many, and it was funny, all the males died. It was like all the males that were living in the street, the husbands or grandfathers, they were the ones all dying. It didn't affect the women. So it was a very unusual pattern that was happening there. So it was like, it was all traumatized, that whole street. There had been some sort of sacrificial thing happening there to the males. So it felt like they were sacrificing and killing males in that part of, I don't want to say, because I don't want to kind of say where it was, but so in the past, and that vibration, that frequency was still there, and it was affecting all the males in that particular street, and probably affecting all the other streets. I was just, because I was called to clear house in that particular street, but I felt it went on for quite a bit. So I had to build a huge, I brought down a beautiful huge portal of light to kind of encompass the entire, wherever it was, the entire, many other streets, the entire suburb of where it was, to heal and cleanse and clear. And as I did that, I could feel this trauma energy and this sort of darkness lifting, and I saw blood. I saw that people were sacrificed and killed, and I could see the energy of blood rising up, and so that's how important it is to be able to clear and heal the land also. And it can affect you mentally, it can affect you physically, and affect you spiritually. And often when there's a land with much trauma, it will also tend to to draw a lot of dark entities and dark energies to that area, because it's kind of a conduit to hold the darker presences. So people have endless issues in living on land that's traumatized. So until you can bring down the light and bring it right down into the land, then it begins to change, heal, and transform. And when we do this, it's important, because it's important that we all start to heal our land, you know, because Australia has been built on so much bloodshed and tears, and some states more than others. Yeah, especially I feel it very much in Sydney, especially going around Botany and those areas. There's so much trauma from the past there. Different areas I've really felt where there's trauma and suffering, and we can all do our part again to just, you know, simple exercise of connecting with your heart and sending that love vibration through. And you may not see or sense or feel as much as I do, but I think you'll sort of feel and sense enough to know that you'll feel a shift in your own energy. And when you feel the shift in your own energy, that means that you've shifted things in the land.
And the thing is like Aboriginal culture is so beautiful, and they had such, and you know, still do have such a strong connection to the land.
All Indigenous did, American Indians.
Like such a strong connection to spirituality and nature. And of course, we know what happened with white settlement and colonisation and stealing the land is that it decimated those cultures, those beautiful cultures, and there is so much residual trauma for that. Can we actually heal this trauma? It just feels so immense, the amount of horrors that have occurred. And it also, as you mentioned, it stretches to America as well. So if anyone is listening from America, or everyone knows about America, is that it's the same situation. They slaughtered their indigenous peoples, slavery, so much darkness associated with that country's history, as with Australia. Is there coming back from that? You know, how do we come back from such immense generational trauma?
By doing, I feel, what I've explained. If each one of us take responsibility for our own piece of land, or perhaps there's a beautiful park that you go for walks in, or you take your dogs there, maybe you can speak to other people, other neighbours or people, and get together and have a beautiful, loving ceremony in that part of your town, of your suburb, and bring down, when you focus with your heart, close your eyes and feel that beautiful portal of divine light coming down from Creator God, and channel it, anchor it into the land. Feel yourself holding that energy like you're a conduit, and you're just channeling and bringing in that energy, and you feel like pillars of light even, and bring it right down into the center of the earth, and hold it there, anchor it there. That's how you can begin to heal. So if everybody was to do that in their own backyards, imagine how much pillars of love and light would be anchoring on the planet, which would make a difference to yourself and to the land, but also to the people that suffered, because sometimes a spirit can be trapped in that trauma, so they can't cross over. And that's what I've seen on a lot of land, that they're trapped in that trauma, in that moment of their death, and when you actually release that trauma, they're able to rise up and go back into the spirit realms. I love the Blue Mountains. I live in the Blue Mountains, and there's so much. When I go for bushwalks, I come across patches of land where there's so much trauma, and I can feel someone's died there, or maybe a whole bunch of tribes have died there, and it's very heartbreaking. So I just sit and bring in the light and the love and help those souls that are trapped in that trauma to cross over. But obviously the more of us that participate in that, the more easier it is, and the quicker it will be to heal the land. So even if you want to do a meditation, and you might sort of feel yourself rising up, connecting to spirit, and then see the whole globe and feel yourself bombarding your love and light over the entire globe, the entire planet Earth, or flat Earth, whatever you believe in, I don't mind. But just set that into, because there's a lot of controversy, flat Earth. It doesn't matter. Just send the light, send love, because every bit of love and light that we can send individually and together as a collective is going to shift the energy of trauma. Because if we don't shift it, then trauma continues to recreate itself and recreate trauma in different ways. So if we become these conduits of love and light, and we channel with intention to Mother Earth or your suburb or whatever it may be you feel capable of doing, then that's going to raise the frequency. It's going to help to heal the trauma. It's going to help to heal each other, and it's going to steer this planet in a different direction where there can be more love, light, and harmony. So that's how you would change and transform the energy of land. And it's like, it's the whole thing, where you go to a cemetery, everybody always feels there's so many spirits in a cemetery, and it's dark, and because it's a place of mourning. People go there and they're so sad, they're crying, they've lost loved ones. So that energy of pain and suffering always builds up in cemeteries. So send love and light to cemeteries. Send, the same thing. There's that build up of people suffering and of pain. So they're the areas that need it most. And talking about trauma as well, this is such a big topic, but do you think it's fair to say that since the dawn of humanity there has been an element of trauma that has followed each generation through? So it's almost like humanity is trapped in a cycle of trauma, where it's like you're born into trauma, you experience trauma, you might commit trauma, and it's just this cycle of trauma until we learn That's why it keeps recreating itself.
Until we learn to actually heal ourselves and each other and break that cycle. I know the Buddhism has a lot about healing trauma and breaking cycles as well, but do you think, is there something in that?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. It's again, it's taking the responsibility and setting the intention to heal the trauma, not only of yourself or ourselves, but healing the trauma of the land, healing the trauma of the environment around us. Because yes, since the beginning of time, there's been invasions, there's been wars, there's been constant trauma. Unfortunately, battlefields, wars, all of that is still very much a living energy. It's a living energy within the environment of this planet. So when we set the intention to begin to heal these traumas, then we're shifting the energetic environment of our planet into one of more harmony rather than the conflict that we're still experiencing. And this is why we keep experiencing so much conflict on our planet, because energy just continues to recreate itself. Like I said, now there's talk of World War III. But why is that? Because there's been so many, World War II, World War I in the past, and all the conflict and fighting and massacres on our planet. So if we can continue to, each one of us, set love and light and anchor it, always anchor the love into the planet. Because that is like, you're a creator, you're creating, you're bringing in pillars of love and light and anchoring it into the planet. That helps it to heal. It helps it to kind of almost wipe out history, the energetic history, and we're anchoring that love and light, and then that can begin to grow, and then that changes the experience that we're having on this planet into one of more love and more harmony, rather than the constant conflict that we keep re-experiencing. And we're experiencing it through many lifetimes. Each lifetime we're hit with a different conflict, but it's always there's too much conflict on this planet. The scale's out of balance. So that's another way to tackle. I mean, you know, we're hearing about World War III and people are like, oh my God, I hope it doesn't happen. Oh my gosh. But no, do something about it. You can do something to help change that, is bring in powerful love, light, frequency into the earth, anchor it and change it. Especially these countries where there is conflict. If we all do our part, we can really change reality. I'm such a believer, but there's just not enough of us getting involved to do that. You know, people are just going by day. I'm getting through this day, I've gotten through that week, I've done my shopping, I've done my groceries, and you know, and that's all that matters. Is just we're in this, you know, survival mode. As long as I'm surviving, as long as I've got my job, as long as I'm paying my bills, and we're forgetting the bigger picture of it's just not temporary survival for now, for this lifetime, but the bigger picture of, you know, changing and blessing and making this sacred ground, making our whole planet a sacred earth, rather than an earth of conflict and trauma and drama. And it doesn't mean that you still can't go to work and do all these things and get through your own lives, but you can do that little extra. You know, sit outside with your children, form a circle of love in your backyard, put some beautiful flowers, bring in the water, bring a bowl of water, bring in the water element. And so that when you put a bowl of water in the center of your circle and you're bringing in the water element and you're sending it love, you're asking for that, all the water of the earth, the oceans, the rivers, the lakes to also be blessed. You're using that bowl of water as you know, part of representing all the water energy of the earth. You know, you might bring in some sand and you bless the beaches. You've got the land, you're blessing the land. So just get really creative. When your intention is of love and light, it can't go wrong. Don't think, oh my God, I might get it wrong. If your heart is in the right place and your intentions are one of love, and then you can't go wrong. Just go with your imagination. And when you do that, your own beautiful guides or your higher self or your own soul will come in and give you the downloads of what you need to do. And you might need to do that for a few times. You might feel a slight shift the first time. You might think, I'm going to do this again in another week, or I might do it at a particular new moon. Whatever it is, get all your crystals I'm sure everybody's got crystals at home. Bring them and scatter them on your backyard and see those crystals absorbing the light and the love from Prime Creator God. So imagine if we all did this just in our backyards, what a massive change it would make.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really simple. It's not hard, but I just think people don't know, or they're afraid to own their power and say, right, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to sit within my imagination and I'm going to just do what feels right. Stop being afraid. Take control in your own hands. Take back your power. And the more you do this, the more you will feel more powerful. And the more powerful you feel, the greater a conduit of love and light you will become.
Yeah, great advice. Really great advice.
I don't think any of us want another world war, for God's sake. So none of us want any more conflict on this planet. It does not resolve anything.
No, it does not. It just keeps the trauma going on and on and on.
Yeah, over and over again. And people get hurt, lose their lives, and it's all for what, you know? So if we can all take matters into our own power and say, I'm going to change this, even if it feels so minute and small what you're doing, trust me, it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe you should all get together with your neighbours and share and say, how about we all start blessing our lands? And this is why too a lot of neighbours fight. There's a lot of people come to me and say, I've got this horrible neighbour. You're probably sitting on some ley lines that are full of trauma and fear and lost souls and God knows what else. They could be even holding some really dark entities that are creating the fight between you. So try blessing your land. Maybe even bless the land of the neighbor that you're having the conflict with. and see if that might heal the situation. You see, you never think of that. We just think I hate my neighbor and I'm gonna, send all these bad vibes, and that's just feeding the conflict.
Yeah.
That's just feeding the dark realms. That's what they want.
Yeah.
Like I said, the dark realms have a hold over humanity, and they don't want to lose that grip over you. But why don't you try blessing your land? Bless your neighbour's land that you're having the conflict with. Anchor lots of domes of love, light over the land for both of you. And that might be the one thing that might change the frequency and change your relationship to be one of peaceful. I'm not saying you're going to become best friends. I mean, that could even happen. But at least you're doing something from a different perspective. As humans, we just react from our emotions. We're emotional beings. Our first reaction is, that bastard or that so-and-so. And but then you got to calm down and say, okay, what would love do in this situation? That's what I'm a hot, fiery Italian too. I lose my shit, believe me. But then I calm down.
I must be Italian as well then.
Yeah, you've probably got Irish
well.
in you, I reckon. And then I sit down and go, okay, now what would love do? What would love do in this situation? And when I've calmed down and asked what love would do, then the answer comes. So that's how we can end conflict with our neighbours, with each other, and bring love, peace and harmony to our planet.
Talking about blessed land, I did actually want to ask you about sacred sites.
Yeah.
So obviously...
Unfortunately, though, a lot of sacred sites have been bombarded by dark entities and blocked. Right. Yes.
Are there any in particular that you can think of? I was going to ask you about Uluru, which is obviously a very important sacred place.
That is a very sacred site, but I've looked at that a few times and thought that, it's very powerful and it does hold a lot of light, but there's been times where I've done meditations with Uluru. Sorry, it's my Italian accent so bad, I can't get... And I felt like there's been invasions of darkness because again, the dark realms are always looking to go to these sacred sites and add their dark energy or try to de-energize a particular energized sacred site. So again, when you get really good at this, tune into the sacred sites and bombard it with your heart chakra. Like I said, the heart chakra is the most powerful chakra. It's the seat of your soul, the seat of the God within you. Bombard that sacred site with your love. And that will kind of really ping off the dark side and bring and help to keep these sacred sites at a high vibe and protected.
And is part of this like dark forces trying to mess with it as well? I mean, you have like a lot of entitled people who think it's okay to walk over Uluru. Yeah. They don't care that it's a sacred site, and there's a real form of, I guess, disrespect and disregard. Like, is that an example of like dark energy?
That's also absolutely, But that's not going to harm a sacred site as much as like some really dark realms really intentionally sending that frequency of darkness into a sacred site. Yes. And the pyramids are here also holding sacred energy, but they've been turned off, I believe. But I believe they were high frequency. I feel like they were connected up to high frequencies, and they're also meant to hold and bring in high frequency energy. But I sort of feel they've been turned off. So there's a lot of things that go on that people don't know about. But when you become enlightened and you start meditating, become aware, when you start doing this work, your own guides, your own higher self will say, hey, you know what, let's do this today, or let's send energy there. You'll become quite surprised at what you will be capable of doing. And I believe that you're all so capable.
So it's about bringing some positive energy into, even to heal trauma of the past, to heal some of the terrible things that have gone on. But I mean, because of what has happened in Australia, would you say that our country is maybe a little more haunted than most, or is it possibly just,
I just think that wouldn't say that maybe Australia is worse than somewhere else. I feel that everywhere there's trauma at different degrees. I feel that everywhere, that this entire globe is in need of trauma, of healing, of trauma. I mean, even nature's been traumatized because it's been wiped out. Many animals have gone extinct because, again, of greed, and therefore those parts of nature's traumatized. Even though it's so beautiful, there's parts of nature that are traumatized. I mean,
well, we're living in the opposite way to the way Aboriginal culture treats the land. It treats it with respect, and it treats it in a way that it's like you're not working against it, you're working with it. And
that's most of the Indigenous
cultures.
Yeah, they did work in harmony with the land,
and we do not the
don't.
Capitalist society that we have constructed is the opposite of that. It's all about pillaging, destroying, taking, and not giving back. And that's actually why.
But we can give back in this way by at least bringing in that energy and healing. We can, but unfortunately, greed and has definitely
led to planetary turmoil,
chopping down trees, and all of that. And it's really sad, but the planet is an amazing being and it can restore itself, but we need to help it.
Well, let's focus on that. Let's focus on trying to do some good and putting some good energy into the land and doing some healing.
Just start with your backyard.
There you go. Start with your backyard.
Or a park. If you live in a unit, go do it in a park. You can sit quietly. No one needs to know what you're doing. And if they do know, great, tell them. Ask them to join in. I've stayed in bushland when I've gone for walks up the mountains, and people have gone by and looked. I could feel them looking at me like, what's that weirdo doing? And I'm like, oh, what? Join in.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you begin to talk to people, how they'll be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, okay, is that what you're doing? Oh, okay, I might sit with you and do it.
Yeah.
We just got to learn to be able to connect with each other again without shame, without feeling like we're dumb or that we're stupid or what are people going to think, and if they think that you're mad, then let them go off and think that. At least you've planted a seed, and you don't know down the track that seed will flourish, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I told that person they were crazy and now look, I'm doing it. So I just think if we all do our share, we can make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's just been too much darkness on the planet, but we're 8 billion in population. So if 8 billion people focused from their heart and brought love onto this planet, oh my gosh, we would just,
transform everything.
Transform and raise the vibration and lift ourselves up into the much higher dimensions, and everything could heal.
Yeah. Let's do that. There you go. There's a challenge. Get in the backyard, do some healing, put some good energy back out there. That's what we need to do. Yeah. So enough being passive and a bit more action.
Just take time out. Take an hour out of your week to make a difference, to send love, light somewhere.
There you go. There's a challenge for the week.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Tuning in, guys. We love you all, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
You betcha. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
To gain access to private spiritual development classes, guided meditations, and live Q&As with Katerina, please visit www.patreon, that's patreon.com/The Australian Ghost Whisperer.